In Palestine, Israeli authorities ordered the arrest of a young man hours after his release from 10 years of incarceration. And China raises tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 125% in response to the tariff war unleashed by Donald Trump's administration. And in Panama, U.S. troops will be able to deploy in areas of access to and adjacent to the Panama Canal, according to an agreement signed by the two countries. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. In Palestine, Israeli authorities put the 23-year-old young man Ahmed Wanastra under house arrest hours after his release 14 years of incarceration. Wanastra has a serious head injury as a result of the brutal conditions to which he was subjected in prison. His lawyer reported that Wanastra's 10 years of imprisonment aggravated his psychological health, which led him to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. The attorney added that Israeli authorities have placed the young man under house arrest until Sunday, preventing his relatives from celebrating his release. And 10 Palestinians detained from Gaza by Israeli troops were freed and returned to the territory on Thursday, saying they had suffered constant abuse while in prison. The 10 prisoners, all of them middle-aged or above, elderly men, disembarked, visibly tired from the buses in which they arrived at the hospital. One of them, with visible wounds to his head and hands, needed help to get out of the vehicle and had to be transferred directly to a wheelchair. The prisoners claimed not to know why they had been released, although they all had in common that they were elderly and suffering from illnesses.
Is this how my father was? Is this what he has become? He wasn't like this. This isn't the father that we know. This isn't the father that they took away. My father lived through famine, through a difficult life. He lived under bombardment. He got out from under the rubble twice. My father was shaken while he was injured. His pelvis was broken and he had fracture in his spine. He had just left the hospital and he could barely walk. Why did they take him to torture him? From November 6 until today, 156 days have passed since we were in agony. We were tortured and we were in pain. There was no rest or sleep for us there. We were tortured every day, and every day they oppressed and humiliated us. We thank God we came out safe.
And the new wave of Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has killed dozens of Palestinians within the last 24 hours as the aggression intensifies. The Gaza Health Ministry announced on Thursday that 40 Palestinians have been killed and 146 others injured in the past 24 hours as a result of the ongoing Israeli airstrikes. The ministry added that the total death toll from the Israeli aggression on Gaza had risen to 50,886. The ministry issued an urgent appeal to replenish medical supplies in hospitals and primary care centers, reporting a critical and unprecedented shortage of essential medicines and medical consumables. And Gaza's health ministry warns of unprecedented shortage of medicines due to continued Israeli attacks. The health system in Gaza is facing a total collapse and urgently appeal for help to reinforce supplies to hospitals and primary care centers, which are facing critical shortages never seen before. According to official figures, some 80,000 patients with diabetes and 110,000 patients with hypertension have no medicines. In addition, 37% of essential drugs and 59% of basic medical supplies are completely out of stock. The closure of border crossings prevents the entry of medical aid, aggravating the health crisis. And moving on to other news, China raises tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 125% in response to the tariff war unleashed by Donald Trump's administration. Additional tariffs on goods imported from the United States will be revised as of April 12th. The latest 41-point increase is another Beijing response to the so-called reciprocal tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Chinese authorities have reiterated that the imposition of the United States of abnormally high tariffs on the country violates international trade rules and runs counter to basic economic laws and common sense. And in the United States, Democratic lawmakers accuse President Donald Trump of manipulating the financial market by boosting insider trading amid the suspension of reciprocal tariffs on the country's trading partners. The senators also charged the president with the crime of illicit enrichment, demanding that an immediate investigation be opened, while warning that these constant political alterations represent a real risk of financial corruption. In this regard, Senator Chris Murphy alleged that this demonstrates a clear intention to allow the closest to his successor to benefit financially. The Democrat statements followed by a message from Donald Trump in which he said that this is a great time to buy before announcing a 90-day pause on new tariffs for most countries except China. And also in the United States, a court issued an order stating that the government must return the incarcerated deported and allow his immigration case to run its course. The U.S. Supreme Court of Justice requested the return to the country of the Salvadoran citizen Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was supposedly wrongly sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. The situation of Abrego Garcia, who immigrated to the U.S. due to the constant threats he and his family received from the criminal gang Barrio 18, required the intervention of the justice system. This action violates the precepts of the Constitution regarding an individual who is a legal U.S. citizen. And New York City Mayor Eric Adams reported the death of 6 people in a helicopter crash on the Hudson River. During a press conference, Adams confirmed that the victims are the pilot and a family from Spain comprised of 2 adults and 3 children. Authorities detailed that the helicopter belonged to a tourist company identified as New York Helicopter Tours, which provides services of panoramic tours over the city. The New York Police Chief, Jessica Titch, declared that emergency teams recovered 4 bodies, while the other 2 victims, although found alive, died after their arrival at the hospital. The Democratic Republic of the Congo officials and M23 negotiators arrived in Qatar for ceasefire talks. Members of the 2 delegations confirmed their presence and said there was a direct meeting on Wednesday, but they were still discussing the framework of the talks. The push for peace talks is the latest effort to end a years-long standoff with its roots in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. The Democratic Republic of the Congo government agreed to direct talks in Angola last month, but the M23 pulled out the day before the talks were due to start, citing European Union sanctions against the movement and Rwandan officials. In Australia, illegal rubbish dumping alongside roads in Melbourne's outer suburbs has become a nationwide problem. Officials report that the issue has doubled in the past 5 years, with the authorities now receiving 4,000 illegal dumping reports annually. Local councils are responsible for cleaning up roadside rubbish, but they claim they lack the necessary resources to manage it all, leaving residents to cover the costs themselves. The Environment Protection Authority reports that they receive approximately 11 reports daily, amounting to over 4,000 reports every year.
Penalties will range from about $400 if you're an individual that litters, but for more aggravated pollutions, that could be millions of dollars in fines, but equally jail time.
Let's now take our break. We'll be right back, so don't go away. Welcome back. U.S. troops will be able to deploy in areas of access to and adjacent to the Panama Canal, according to an agreement signed by the two countries. The government of Panama rules out that they are military bases, a sensitive issue in Panama as it evokes the time before the United States handed over the canal to the Panamanians in December 1999. The agreement, which will be in force for 3 years and renewable, establishes that the installations will be the property of the Panamanian state and will be for joint use by the security forces of both countries. In the midst of the tension, the president of Panama, Jose Raul Mulino, revealed that the United States erased from a joint statement the phrase recognizing Panama's inalienable sovereignty over the canal.
What was signed the day before yesterday is an operational administrative memorandum of understanding between two defense entities, our Ministry of Security and the Ministry or the Secretary of Defense of the United States, up to where in at least 4 versions that were returned, we withdrew the concepts of permanent military presence, of military bases, of cession of territory, because that is indeed unacceptable.
Also in Panama, the Single National Union of Workers in the Construction and Similar Industries, SONTRAX, called on citizens to participate in defense of their country in the face of the United States interference. Workers of SONTRAX Union mobilized in rejection of the most recent agreement signed by the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. They emphasized that this meeting constitutes an affront to national sovereignty and a violation of the Constitution. Demonstrators also expressed their rejection of Law 462 on the Social Security Fund, which they believe affects workers and their families. SONTRAX announced that the union will remain mobilized, including an indefinite national strike until it is repealed.
Once again, the organized workers have taken to the streets to demonstrate, to defend national sovereignty. Jose Raul Molino, we already know that you are surrendered to Yankee imperialism. We will not allow it.
In other news, in Chile, 2 young football fans, one of them a minor, were killed by policemen before the match between Colo-Colo and Fortaleza in Group E of Libertadores Cup. According to local media, a 13-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl, both Colo-Colo fans, died after being run over by a police car in the vicinity of the Monumental Stadium in Santiago de Chile. The match between Colo-Colo and Fortaleza started as scheduled, but it was stopped in the 76th minute. According to the chief of the West Zone of Santiago, General Alex Bahamondes, the driver of the car responsible for the incident has been charged but was not arrested. It is not the first time that Chilean policemen, known as carabineros, have repressed and killed football supporters in the vicinity of the Monumental Stadium. Also in Chile, former military personnel responsible for the death of the young Ecuadorian Romario Veloz during the social outburst occurred in October 2019 appealed to the Supreme Court with complaint resources that could leave their crimes unpunished. During the trial, Chilean Army Captain Jose Faundes Sepulveda and Cape Jose Arenas were sentenced to 15 and 5 years respectively for these crimes. Nevertheless, the Supreme Court accepted these appeals in an act catalogued as strange by the querellant's lawyers, given that most of these initiatives are usually rejected. They warned that this action could be a signal for human rights violators to seek impunity. And the 4th conference, Dilemmas of Humanity, concluded Thursday in Brazil after 4 days of debate on economic and social solutions to the crisis generated by capitalism and neoliberalism in the world. During the last day of the event, the new financial architecture panel discussed alternatives to the exclusive use of the dollar in the global financial system and stressed that the current system does not offer protection against global crises, such as the one created by Donald Trump's tariffs measures. On the other hand, the panel argued that the role of the institutions created at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, controlled by the large Western economies, should be diluted into a more regional basis. The event brought together political leaders, intellectuals, and representatives of social movements from more than 20 countries of all corners of the world. And also in Brazil, indigenous communities demonstrated in front of Congress to demand outlawing the law that grants rights to indigenous peoples only on lands that were in their possession on October 5, 1988. Indigenous communities reject the law promoted by the agribusiness sector and supported by right-wing congressmen, since it establishes a temporary framework for the jurisdiction of their territories, denying the demarcation of their lands. In this sense, they demand that the Federal Supreme Court issue a definite decision for its suspension and declaration of illegality. It should be noted that after returning in January 2023, President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva pledged to resume land demarcation, a process abandoned during the government of Jair Bolsonaro. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.